kauleza mama, kauleza mama, kauleza mama, kauleza mama, kauleza mama, sheshi sabo.
Hello, my name is Nomanono Isaacs. I was born in South Africa years ago, and I've lived in England for 37 years now. I wrote a book, this book called Escaping Apartheid, A Letter to My Mother, because I miss my mother desperately, and I couldn't go to South Africa for 26 years. I couldn't see my mom. I missed her desperately, and my mother was my strength, and she had so much love. And this is why I wrote the book, as a way to a tribute to my mom for the love that she was and the strength that she was to all of us. So I couldn't see her. It took me 26 years before I was able to go to South Africa, only because they declared an amnesty in 1992. So that was good. I was able to see my mom. But at the time I wrote this book, I didn't think that I would be able to see her. I have 2 grandchildren, a grandson who's 2 years old, and a granddaughter who's 7 years old.
Nomanono Isaacs. She's a South African-born published author of Escaping Apartheid, A Letter to My Mother. This is her personal story, growing up under apartheid South Africa and her eventual escape. Hers is the story of an ordinary person's day-to-day experiences under apartheid, and the reason why this is written as a letter to her mother is because for 26 years she was unable to see her mother due to being in exile from apartheid South Africa, and she missed her desperately. Writing was a way of appreciating her mother's love and strength, and a way of sharing things she wished she could have shared with her mother prior to her escaping. Nomanono is currently working on a plan to work with children in schools on what she calls a love project, how to let go of anger and hatred. She's also currently working on her first novel. Please welcome to the stage, Nomanono Isaacs.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to read from 2 chapters, very short segments though. Chapter 1 and chapter 12. Chapter 1, Love Under a Willow Tree. Mama, the year is 1992, and the month is May. We are thousands of miles apart. You are in South Africa, and I'm in England. It was 24 years last Christmas since I saw you. Do you remember the Christmas of 1967? I remember it as though it was yesterday. It was the last time we spent together. There are so many things that I always wished I could tell you about. I always hoped we would meet soon, but soon has turned into many years. Nevertheless, I still pray to whoever is out there in the universe that one day we will meet. I pray our old prayers too, to our ancestors. One evening, 4 years ago, I scribbled these lines. So many times I've told myself, life has to go on anyway, for there is so much I want to do. I have told myself, life is short and has to be lived. In my case, through hard work. Feeling homesick is not going to help me, so I convince myself. But every second of my waking day, I have a constant heartbeat, very painful. Sometimes I have detached myself successfully from the feeling that somewhere, something very important in my life is missing. The family I left behind. You see, I used to cry a lot. Nowadays, I tell myself I am tough, strong, and life has to go on. But I'm haunted by the images I hold in my mind of my 12 and 9-year-old brothers. They were that age when I last saw them. They are all men today. As for my mother, she was 42 years old when I last saw her. Today, she is 64. But images still are those of a beautiful 42-year-old. I tell myself I must carry on regardless. But suddenly, it hits me. I can't hold my tears anymore. I let them flow down my cheeks when I am on my own, no one about. With the wrenching pain between my breasts, yes, I am homesick. Chapter 12, The Last Miles. This is about the time I spent with the South African Police Special Branch officers. I call them the SBs. And Tammy is the father of my children. After all that I had promised, we set off, going back the way we had come in during the morning, the Kokstad route. We drove past Clydesdale once more, and it was a pleasant sunny afternoon. I was in the SB's good books now. They were convinced that I was definitely going to point out the people they were looking for. Driving past Clydesdale, we went up a winding hill just before Tembeni. But there is that stretch of road, on the national road, that does not give much room to pedestrians. In most cases, people tend to walk facing oncoming cars. As we drove on this stretch of the road, it was hot and the windows were down, and both the SBs were in front. They had obtained Tammy's description from the family he lived with. I was just about to fall asleep when one of the SBs turned and looked at me saying, "Look, is that not Ngaliwe, Tammy's family name? Look at that jacket, the balaclava, the features. Everything seems to fit the description of him." I turned my head and looked out. He was behind a group of school children. He saw the car and saw that we were looking at him. I turned to the SB who was waiting for my confirmation. I told him, "No, it is not him." I do not know where I got the confident, calm manner, but I was convincing. Inside me, I was scared. They drove away believing that it was not Tammy. When we turned towards Gugwini, I could not believe it. I had thought that I was going to be detained that night. But they drove me to my rented accommodation and I was very pleased. Then I made a terrible mistake. I told the woman who was Tammy's distant relative, where he had lived all along, that the SBs had trusted me and had waited for my confirmation of Tammy. I did not know that at that time she had already been bought by the SBs and had been promised a lot of money. Incidentally, I had been promised money too. I had been told that the money I would get would be far more than what I was earning as a teacher. She reported me to the SBs. Thank you. Of my book. The title is Running Away from South Africa. This is what I have always wanted you to know. Late June 1968, it was in the evening and dark enough to conceal all suspicious movements when I shook Lizzie's hand for the last time saying, "Good night and goodbye, my friend. And remember, you know nothing about my whereabouts." Liz was a teacher in the same school and had been trained at Sikau Teacher Training College as me. We had started at Gugwini Primary School on the same day, and as it happened, we also rented accommodation in the same household. After my farewell to Liz, I turned and walked cautiously towards a barbed wire fencing I had to creep through to reach an anxiously waiting Tammy. My only luggage was a small suitcase with 2 dresses, a skirt, and a pair of shoes, while on the other side of the fence, Tammy's sole luggage was what he was wearing.